I've been thinking a lot about Maya Angelou, who died about a year ago. And my favorite quote from her is, "You don't always remember what people do to you, but you do remember how they make you feel." And so today, I want you to feel inspired and feel empowered to ask for and get your true worth. Now, there's a few things that come to mind, at least for me. You ever ask yourself or feel that the market doesn't actually respect your true worth, or that your bank account doesn't necessarily reflect your true worth, or that the world has not really seen your true worth, and you ask yourself why? I'm here to help you understand that. The first thing is that you're all magicians. I'm a magician as well. We are magicians because we make things out of thin air. We do things that are amazing, but invisible. There's always the plumber analogy, which we've all used. I own a home. If any of you own a home, you know who the plumbers are in your neighborhood. And you call the plumber, you get a rate, they come through. You pay them. It's a transaction. They get there, they don't fix it, you still pay them, right? It's service law, right? They get there, they figure out some amazing stuff that's happening, amazing in a bad way. You're still going to pay them. And you're going to pay them for the tools, the services. They're going to say, well, it's going to be triple. And you know, they're not calling accounts payable to track down the invoice, are they? Right? They're not negotiating after it was done, or you're not negotiating with them after it was done that you're going to pay a little bit less. No, it's set. So that's the burden that we kind of have. We're creating things that are less tangible, but they still have an impact. So you can change a sentence, change a couple words, and suddenly the lead to this magazine story changed it from something that was kind of okay to an award-winning piece. You can change the beginning of a novel, and it shifts from something that's a mid-list thing to a bestseller. You know, it was the best of times, and it was the worst of times. Something as simple as that can change someone's life. But those things are invisible. Now, I'm talking today because the rest of the world might not get it. It's important that you get it, that you understand your worth, because we're doing these invisible things, and it's easy to forget to ourselves, to not tell ourselves what our actual worth is and why it matters. Now, part of the confusion, I think, when it comes to worth is that, at least in my opinion, there are three different types of worth. There's the worth to the market, and that's usually the people who would pay you, the editors, the agents, because those are the transactional people, the people who will, you know, take you on to take on your project. They're the publishers, if you do books, etc. Then there's the value, of course, to your bank account, your net worth, and we often measure that in the advances we get, the consulting fees we get, the dollar per word or cents per word, whatever we happen to be getting. And lastly, there's our value and our worth to the world. That's the service. What are we actually doing to impact the world? For good or for ill. Now, I kind of look at it like a three-legged stool. If you have two of those legs together, and you have those worths together, but you're missing one, you're unstable at best. If you only understand one of your worths out of those three, you're going to fall over. So if you're focused on just the market and what the market needs, then you're going to be focused on whatever's trending. So if we were talking 10 years ago, you'd be really into mommy blogging, right? Tell me I'm wrong. Nothing wrong with that, just that's what was trending at the time. If it was 5 years ago, we're speaking, you know, that'd be 2013, then we'd be talking about, or you'd be focused on Twitter and Facebook, and because that's when social media was most hot. It's kind of fallen out of favor for a few reasons. We won't get into it. So if you're focused just on the trends, then that's kind of like building on quicksand, because you're going to be running towards the next thing. That doesn't sound like a good way to have value. As people much smarter than I have said, building your value based on external things is ripe for disaster. So if you build it based on what the market needs, you're not going to make it. If you focus just on the value as far as your bank account, and all of us value money. If we focus just on the bank account, though, there's a level of bitterness and brittleness that happens with that. Because one of two things will happen. Either you're doing stuff for the money, and it's going to show up in your work. You're not going to do the quality work because you're not going to be focused on the service that you're providing and just trying to get the paycheck. Or the people that you work with will recognize and see. People are really smart. They will see that you're doing it just for the money. And either you're going to lose those clients, or there will be a bitterness that comes from them because they know why you're doing it. So you can't just depend on the money either, right? The third leg is service, your net worth to the world. And if you just focus on the service aspect, then surprise, you're a starving artist, right? I just want to give to the world. Well, no, you run a business. You can't just give to the world, and if you don't actually value your service and just give, then you're not going to be able to build any type of stability. There's a great book by Jeff Goins called Real Artists Don't Starve. I highly recommend it. It came out about 2 years ago. And the idea of starving artists just came about a century ago. But if you know your history with Da Vinci and Michelangelo, they lived better than we do, right? If you know any of that history. They were living in palaces, they were hanging out, they ate well. But they didn't have any shame for getting paid for their work. We're talking the Sistine Chapel, we're talking about David, right? These things that we're still talking about today. And they were paid well. They were still doing a service, obviously. So you have to have all three legs together. And what we're going to talk about today is each of those legs, and ideally the secret that will help you get the stability for each of those. So the first leg is us understanding our value to the market. Now the value to the market is, as I talked about, for many of us, whoever is writing the checks. So the publisher here, the editor here, the assistant here, if you do consulting, as I do sometimes, the companies. And we end up creating value for ourselves based on other people's desire to work with us. Here's a big secret though, which some of you might already know. Every single contract that you sign is a partnership. A partnership, not 49-51, it's 50-50. They happen to be writing the checks. But it doesn't matter if it's Vanity Fair and they're paying you $3 a word, or it's a Midwest publication that's a free weekly and they're paying you 10 cents a word. Each one is a partnership. I'll give you a quick example. One of the things that we talk about a lot over the years is publishers taking ideas, right? So we end up pitching an idea, and then it goes silent, which is probably the worst, but it goes silent, or we get feedback and it's like, I don't know, and then the magazine or the website or whatever comes out, and it's like, wait, that's my idea. You might confront them about it, or you might quietly seethe, as many of us do. I'm not going to work for them again. I'm not going to talk to them, or I'm going to quit freelancing. Whatever that process is, right? Whatever bitterness comes from that. Understandable. But if any of you, if you can raise your hands, have any of you actually worked inside the publishing industry as far as books? Right. And how many of you have worked for a publication, like a magazine, like on the inside, or a newspaper? So, thank you. So all of you know that most publications and most publishing opportunities, publishing places, are overworked and understaffed. So it's kind of like when you're talking to someone at a party, which happens to me often, and they'll say, I have a book I want to do. I'm like, that's great. What's it about? It's like, well, I don't want to share it with you because I'm afraid you're going to steal it. And I'm like, I have, As I get older, I'm like, I'm going to run out of time for my ideas. Like, why am I worried? And the presumptuous and the ego, I'm like, why do you think I'm going to steal your idea? Like, this is my profession, right? The same thing could be said for these organizations. Again, if you've worked on the inside, remember how you felt. I know I did. When I was assistant editor, when I was very young, I was managing editor of a business publication, and I was way over my head. I'm not trying to take someone else's ideas. I do not even have the space to write them. I'm just trying to get through the day. So, there's a reason why we are needed. They need us. They can't complete every task. Otherwise, they wouldn't hire freelancers. So I'm not saying that your ideas will never be stolen. I'm saying take that premise and understand what they're going through. They need us. It is a partnership. Take the money out of it. It's a partnership. They absolutely need us. So you need to keep that in mind. So the best way that you can actually increase your value in the market is to make your voice stronger. Now you can say a literary voice, and we can talk about that, but that's for another discussion. But I mean your literal literary voice, like what you speak up to, what it means, what you represent. There's another longtime ASJA member named Megan Francis. You guys might know her. And her and I started the ASJA around the same time, about 15 years ago. And her thing is she has a big family. I have 2 kids at home. She has 6. I don't know how she does it, but that's her thing. She was a mommy blogger, doing her thing. And then she realized that she could have a bigger voice. So she started writing books. She has a book, I believe it's called Table for 8. Not an exaggeration. And it did well, she built that. She realized that she can have a bigger voice and make it even tighter. Sometimes you have to get more narrow to expand. So she went even tighter and said, I'm going to start a podcast. Before podcasts were fashionable, right? And she started her podcast, got some buzz with it. Enough buzz where now she actually hosts other people's podcasts. So she has a media company called Life Listened Network that she just launched a couple years ago. She's like a mini Oprah now. Like she's hosting other people. As they say, she's a check writer now. She's not receiving royalties, she's writing checks. What an amazing thing. So when she goes and talks to one of the major publications, and she's pitching them on family life, or more accurately, when they're coming to her, how do you think she's looking at it? Is she looking at it as a writer that's getting a handout? But that's because her voice is so strong. You don't need to do the podcast, you don't need to do the public speaking and all that stuff, but you need to identify and respect your voice. You are a partner in this, whether you realize it or not. As I say, I recommend you go home and look at your contracts. Each one of those contracts is a partnership. I don't care if it was for free work. That's a partnership because they need you as much as you need them. A personal example is a few years ago I did a hardcover book with Hugh Hefner called Playboy's Greatest Covers. Unfortunately, it was virtual, so I never got a chance to meet him before he passed. A few years before that, I started writing features for Playboy. I actually met Playboy when I was a broke freelancer in Chicago, straight out of grad school. And I happened to bump into a Playboy editor at a function. And I talked to them. And again, I couldn't pay my rent. Like, literally, I couldn't pay my rent. And instead of saying to them, luckily it was people that were wiser than I who guided me, Instead of saying to them, you have to put me on, as they said, you have to get me into the publication, I need to write. I'm not eating this week, I'm a literally starving artist, please let me write for you. It was like, no, actually. I was young at the time, so it's like, I'm a young guy. Some of you know me, I focus on technology and how it connects us. I had already been a managing editor of a publication. I came from Northwestern grad school, which is where I just got from. And I understand what's happening. Your publication is 60 years old. I'm a young man who went to one of the best schools. Let me help you get your publication back on edge. Now, if I came to them with hat in hand, what's the Charles Dickens, please sir, may I have more? Like, if I came to them like that, do you think that Hugh Hefner would be contacting me through my agent? Right? Do you think I'd be doing features for them? No. So again, these things are partnerships. I've been writing and working with Playboy for almost 2 decades, but it's based on an initial connection. So it doesn't really matter what those dynamics are financially or even what's going on personally. When you establish that connection, that's the foundation for what you're going to do with them. And that's going to establish your value in the market, period. So again, when you get home, if you're nerdy like me, I have all my contracts. But look over some of those contracts. If you're having issues with the market, think about the dynamics you've created. There's something to that. So 1, your value to the market. Understand everything that you do as a partnership, whether you get paid or not, whether it's a little bit of pay or big pay, whether it's a big conglomerate or it's a little publication. Next, it's your value to your net worth, your bank account. Now, a lot of those conversations, we had some of them last night, as a pre-conference, over a drink. But these conversations that we often are having end up being based on metrics, on measurements. I got 50 cents a word for this publication. Oh, I got 75 cents. Oh, okay, well next time I'm gonna go for 80 cents. I got this little advance this time, but I'm gonna push for this next advance. And this is going to change the course of my career. So the secret to this is that there is no panacea. There is no one that's waiting no one that's waiting to discover you. Like, no one's waiting to do that. There's not a major publisher that wants to call you and give you a 6 or 7 figure advance out of the blue. And that's going to change your career and give you financial stability. David Remnick's not going to have you on speed dial. He's not going to call you and be like, yes, 10,000 words, $4 a word, you got the New Yorker next week. Can you do it? It's not going to happen. And if it does happen, that 0.001% that it does happen, there's no guarantee that's going to change your career. Fascinating fact, a lot of the products, most of the products and services and things that are mentioned by Oprah don't actually get the Oprah bump. So the Oprah bump, as you probably can imagine, is that when Oprah Winfrey mentions a book like Eat, Pray, Love or Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and suddenly it goes crazy, it goes to the top of WSJ and New York Times and Publishers Weekly, all those major things, all those major bestsellers list. You have the 6,000% increase, the websites crash, they run out of biscuits or whatever she's into at the time, I think it's usually bread, but they run out of the bread, they run out of the donuts, like whatever she's into, and they'll run out of that stuff. But it's only a fraction. And if you know the stuff, particularly Elizabeth Gilbert stuff, I highly recommend Big Magic. Really, really good book. Highly effective book. And I've seen her speak at TED too. Powerful stuff. She talks about that, where not only is it a gift and a curse, but there's no guarantee when you have the success that you'll be happy, but more importantly, that it will affect your bank account. So what I'd rather do is have you focus on making money now. Like right now. Like, why are you waiting on them? Think about, just take a minute to think about the one thing that you really want to do, like right now. Like the thing that you can't not do. The thing that makes your heart run a little bit faster. I'm thinking about my thing right now, my heart is just pumping. That thing that makes you fearful and also really excited. Because that's where you need to go. Here's the important part. Now, figure out how you can make that happen without waiting for someone else to give you permission. Think about that thing, career-wise, that you want to do. That book, that article, that podcast, whatever. I don't know. It's your thing. Think about that one thing that makes you nervous and excited, that makes you eager to get up tomorrow morning if you knew you were going to pursue it. And then figure out how you can do it without waiting for someone else to give you permission. I'm going to share something that I've not shared publicly, so I'm nervous about it. The Bite-Sized Entrepreneur was initially a failure. And so, if you don't know my story, and I don't think it's a little bit too much for the bio, but in short, I had 2 startups. I started them at the same time I became a stay-at-home dad. And I had a 3-month-old, and yeah, going through all that. The second startup ended up blowing up in a good way. Me and my co-founders and I ended up selling it 11 months later, shortly after my son's 2nd birthday. And with all that chaos, and the time I spent in Silicon Valley, I realized that I could help people who were non-traditional entrepreneurs, people who were stay-at-home dads, people who were people of color, people who were over 30, well, now over 40, having these ideas and helping them achieve it as I had achieved it, working out that balance. So I got a column with Inc. magazine online, started writing for them, and got some good feedback. And I was like, I think there's a book here. People are starting to ask for it. There's a higher level of discussion. So I talked to the agent that I work with sometimes. Actually, I've been working with them for a little while, but I do a lot of different projects. So some of them I do independently and some of them I do with them. And they're like, yeah, it sounds great. We sent it out, and a bunch of publishers were immediately interested. And then we heard from about half of them. And they said, hey, we know that you got your company acquired. We know that you think you know your audience. We know that you believe that non-traditional entrepreneurs are the new thing. It's not the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, like that's done. We know you believe that. We know that the Inc. column is actually followed by, Inc. itself is followed by about 2 million people, and some of them read your column. We get it. We just don't believe that this audience exists and or you know how to reach them. To this day, it's just, I'm over it, but it's just, it's over. Obviously I'm over it. but it just, there's certain things where it's just like, and to hear it a few times, like it was, almost the exact same language. I thought there was a meeting happening, and they were all talking. Right? They had a lunch meeting, like, no, we're going to tell Damon this. Right? I know, you know that feeling. And so I talked to the agent that I work with, and I was like, I know that you're not going to get your cut, but give it back to me. I was like, again, partnership. I'm like, even if someone came and said, the last person said, oh yeah, we don't know about it, but here's a fat advance. Why would I want them in my corner? Are they in my corner? Right? I'm like, no, this is a partnership. You guys are crazy. If you don't see it, that's too bad. So they sent it back to me. We took it off the market. I did my research. 6 weeks later, I self-published it. And it went on the Amazon bestsellers. And that ended up bringing me to consulting, more books in this series, and the whole series is actually in that book, in the Ultimate Bite-Sized Entrepreneur that I have here. The whole series started, I've now been speaking around the world and connecting with people, helping people, and more importantly, each of those areas from that little book are different revenue streams. So right now, as I speak to you, there's between 12 and 18 ways that I'm making a living now from this one book. I literally would not be here right now speaking to you if I didn't say, I'm not going to wait for permission. That was 2 years ago. My life would be markedly different. And so I want you to kind of start your hero's journey. I'm a big Joseph Campbell fan, and you to start your hero's journey. You know that phone is ringing. You know you're getting that call. If you identify with any of this, you've already been getting the call. Figure out or accept that one thing that you really want to do career-wise. And then figure out how you can do it without waiting for someone else to give you permission. If you need permission, I just gave it to you. Go do it. And that directly impacts your finances. Right? So the secret to that is there is no panacea. Don't wait for the phone call from New York. Not gonna happen. So one, understanding that everything that you do is a partnership. That's actually how you create value in the market, and are valued in the market. Two, understand that your finances, that's your responsibility. There is no panacea. Don't wait for the call. Again, if you know what you want to do, think about it, and then figure out how you can do it without waiting for someone else to give you permission. Lastly, and equally important, is understanding your value to the world, your true worth. Now, I'm really into monotasking. Some of you that know me or know my work, I've actually done books about multitasking, like whole books about multitasking. And I'm like, it's the devil, it's awful, you shouldn't do it, blah, blah, blah. But to be honest, that's the nature of our work. This very week, it's pitching people, it's starting a new project, it's in the middle of another project doing that. It's another project that's stalled. There's a project that needs to be finished up, there's a project that's been returned that needs to be edited, organized, there's an invoice to send, there's an invoice to follow up on it again, and then there's coffee meetings, drinks, and so forth, where I'm going to be pitching new ideas. How many of you can identify with that? Is that, thank you, right? That's our week.
The kids' calls.
Thank you, exactly. And those of us that are parents or have elderly parents that we're taking care of, again, my target audience. If we have that, then that makes it even more complicated. So not even getting into the personal stuff, not even getting into your self-care, which I talk about in the book. It's like that has to be paramount as well. It's a serious juggling process. So with all that, I'm really into food, and chefs always say we're in the weeds. We're constantly in the weeds. We're constantly 5 p.m. dinner rush hour, constantly. Because of that, we don't always look up. We don't always get our nose away from the grindstone and say, what are we actually creating? So the secret is actually to understand that you are creating a body of work, whether you realize it or not. There's a great Steve Jobs quote, which I always screw up, so I'm just going to accept that. And he said, use your instincts to figure out what to do next. But understand that until you look back at the history, you won't be able to connect the dots. And he wasn't known to be a reflective guy. Like, I've written several articles about him. He wasn't necessarily known for that. But he did understand that. He knew that there needed to be some type of pause and to say, what am I making? Again, going back to that second leg, or more the first leg, with your contracts and the partnerships you've created. You have a body of work. I've been doing this full time for almost 2 decades. You don't think there's a history there? There's a pattern? And once you see that pattern, you figure out how you can best serve the world. In fact, whether you're super, super conscious, as someone talked about during the meditation process, as far as really being aware and feeling a responsibility as far as how the energy goes out. You could be in that space. Or you could be like, hey, I'm a mercenary, and I just get stuff done. I'll try not to curse here, but I just get stuff done. That's what I do. I'm hired gun, no emotion to it. Either way, you are creating a legacy. It doesn't matter whether you recognize it or not. But if you do not recognize you're creating a legacy, how do you know your true worth to the world? How do you know that? The thing is that you can't. So I'd recommend taking a moment just to pause. Again, I'm a contracts guy, so go through your contracts. I'll go and I'll back up my computer and I'll find a pitch that I sent to Spin Magazine in 2003. And I almost cried tears of joy back then because I was so eager to get into that publication. And it's like, there's a beginning there. That was the part of my service. And seeing that thread, that through line, we know narratives. So seeing that through line to now, what are we creating? What is our legacy? And if we don't understand what we're putting out there,
then how can we tell people and show people our true worth? So understanding that your value to the market is reflective of you understanding your partnerships, and that every single thing that you do is a partnership. Remember, interns become editors, editors become publishers, publishers become moguls or whatever, and the reverse too. And so these dynamics, and the dynamic I have with every single one of you, that is permanent. And so really think about building those relationships, acting like you're going to be like me writing for Playboy for 20 years. Each relationship you build. Second, understanding that there is no panacea. No one's going to be calling you with a fat book contract. And if they do, there's no guarantee that will give you financial stability or save your career or whatever. Don't wait for that call. We're at the point now where you can be making the calls yourself. Become your own boss. You already are. Act like it, right? So understand and think about what you truly want to do career-wise. Maybe just one thing. And then figure out how you can do it without waiting for someone else to give you permission. Lastly, understanding your value to the world. And stopping, maybe just for 5 minutes while you're having your coffee or lunch, stop and think about your legacy. Connect those dots. You kind of have to do that if you want to understand your true worth. If you're feeling kind of lost right now, that might be why. We build everything on a foundation. And if your career is a little bit wobbly right now, you gotta check the cracks in the basement. You gotta look at the foundation. One of my favorite quotes right now, you can tell I'm into quotes. That was my first app, was capturing quotes, so you can tell I'm a quote guy. One of my favorite quotes right now is from late motivational speaker Jim Rohn. And he said, we take away anything from this. He said, when you look at a new job or a new project, don't say, what can I get out of it? Say, what will I become because of it? Not what will I get out of it, what will I become because of it? In other words, every client you take, every job you do, it might be just something to pay the bills. I've done that too. It's not a judgment. But understand that each of those is building your worth. Each of those is contributing to your character. Like Michelangelo's David, where, as he said, you have the block and it's just trying to chip it away so it comes out. You're doing that same thing every day when you work. And so understanding that transformation, and it is a transformative process, and that process will help you transform your value in the market, transform your bank account, transform your service to the world, and transform yourself. Thank you. I think we're going to do some questions until they stop me. So, any questions or thoughts? Right, that's a really good question. Yeah, and when I first started my career, around the time, I was trying to work with Playboy in the beginning, I had a tough time with that because there were 3 distinct areas I was really interested in, and I had no idea what the through line was. And over time, one of the things that really helped, this might sound silly, it's almost making me laugh, is when you're at a party and someone asks you, what do you do? What do you say? And I did my share of partying, so I would someone would ask, and I'd be really proud about it, and then I'd talk to them for 2 minutes. And sometimes they'd be interested, sometimes not, but it's like, 2 minutes is a long time. And it's like, oh, I'm not clear. How are they going to understand? And I talk about this in the book, where it's really about finding your core. So what is your core thing? There's your core and your purpose. You know, your purpose might be, I want to clarify things that are technical for the rest of the world. You know, your core might be, let me understand, let me do this specifically for senior citizens. You know, and understanding that core represents everything that you do. And so I'm of the strong belief that there is a through line in everything that you do. You might not believe it, you might not see it. So to work on that practice and to say, this is what I represent. I have two really simple cores. For a majority of my career, it was showing people that technology brings people together. You go back to 1999, 2000, that was a controversial statement. I don't mind controversy. So I was like, no, but I also grew up with technology. I love tech. So I was like, no, there's a bigger story here that people are avoiding because they don't understand it. Let me help them understand it. And then when I became an entrepreneur and had my experiences, then it's the belief that you have to sacrifice everything to make your entrepreneurial mark is a myth. So I'm at a party, it's like, what do? I dispel that myth, right? And that reverberates through everything that I do. But again, I've been doing it for a long time, so that's why I can just be on stage and just do it like that. But continuing to circle around and get deeper and deeper until you get to the middle of the cornucopia, then it's like, you got it. So I'd say just keep practicing and work on it. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it is. It's
Oh,
very
okay.
helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, what's your sense of print versus online? It's clear you're involved in both, but I mean, will Playboy survive? Will print magazines survive? What's your perspective?
That's a big question. I think print will survive the same way that radio is still around. That's probably the simplest thought. If you think about it, with radio, you know, TV came, what was it, TV killed the radio star, right? I'm showing my age, but if you think about the Google song back in the early 80s. But then you have podcasts. What are podcasts? Radio that you control, right? So, okay. So then it's less about that. I mean, when I did the original Bite-Sized Entrepreneur, I was gonna have it only be digital. And then within a week, very thankful for this, there were two major media organizations. They were like, it was one major author that wanted to see it, and there was one major media organization that wanted to be on TV right away. They do like international thing, which was great. And he said, great, can you bring a copy of the book? And I was like, yeah. Yeah, I can do that. And I had like a week. I lived in Southern California at the time, so I had to drive up to LA, and I'm like, all right. And yeah, within a week, it was the first rough version, but I was able to get it print on demand, and they're still showing it on TV today. So that's an example where I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's just going to be certain formats that are going to become more dominant. And yeah, I don't think most media goes away. It just transforms and turns into something else. I don't know if that makes sense or if that answers your question. Okay, cool. Any other questions or thoughts? Yes.
I was just wondering about the point you made about contracts and the 50-50 partnership. I feel like when I write my contracts that they're generally to outline clear terms and sort of protect me in the relationship, so it seems like it's not as balanced. So how do you balance those two things?
One of the best things that I ever heard, and I wish I knew who said it, is that a successful negotiation is when everyone feels like they lost a little bit. So I sit with that, where, as you go further into space, I can't think of a better term, but as you go further into space, and, for my journey, it was newspaper guy, grad school, magazine guy, book guy, blogger guy, speaker guy, entrepreneur guy, speaker guy again, coach guy, consulting guy. Like, each, as you go to different spaces, not saying that you have to, that's my journey, but as you go to different spaces, there is no rule book for it. So you have to come up with axioms, you have to come to conferences like this, you have to discuss things with people, and then determine what feels right to you. For me, as you can tell, I'm really into long-term partnerships. That's why Playboy and I still work together. If I was like, wow, well, Playboy's offering $1 word for this feature, I'm gonna push them for $2 a word, so I can put a little money away. I can push really hard, and I might be able to get it, but then what? You know, if I'm busting my editor's chops about something, again, the Maya Angelou quote, it's like, it's not what you do, but how you make people feel. So if you're trying to build a relationship and a partnership, you can't take all the marbles. And I personally know freelancers that went too hard, and they're out of the business now. They went too hard. And it's just like, you can't do that. You gotta think about the long-term game. Even if you end up leaving a little bit of money on the table, if you were able to work within someone's budget, within reason, with someone's budget, and you help them shine, then chances are you'll get an opportunity to make that money back from another client, or from word of mouth, or from just the way that you treat that person. Yes?
You know, this concept about creating good karma that you're talking about. So did you have a light bulb moment when you thought, this is what it's about that service piece to you, as you addressed in your speech? Was there a light bulb moment, or is it just the place that you come from, that you've always thought that about freelancing?
Wow, that's a really good question. I've been thinking about this talk, and I never thought about that. That's kind of connecting the dots. A little bit of both. Yeah, I think that, yeah, I can actually think of a few moments now. One key moment was, I did a book called Porn and Pong, How Grand Theft Auto, Tomb Raider, and Other Sexy Games Changed Our Culture. About the history of sexuality in video games. Obviously, I needed to be a Playboy. And I spent 5 years of my life on it. I was still in my 20s, so it was a big chunk of time. Like, most of my adult life was spent on it. The book came out, it was reviewed in Publishers Weekly, you know, it got good feedback. Put myself on book tour, because it was with a small publisher. I bootstrapped the whole thing. A lot of good learning experiences. That was actually 10 years ago. It came out in 2008. That's amazing, right? It's amazing how quickly time flies. But after I did that, I said, now what? Again, I spent a majority of my adulthood doing this. And not because it wasn't satisfying, but it was something that I had to fight so hard to get out. And I was like, what about other people's voices? I've already had my ego gratified. I've already had my dream project done. Similar with my startup Cuddler, which is the one that ended up being sold, which was about connecting people for hugs. It went viral, went to #1 in the Apple App Store in several countries. We were on the cover of the Wall Street Journal and all that. And then we sold the company. And then what? Am I gonna do it again? No. So then, with Porn and Pong 10 years ago, I started co-authoring books with other people, including the book that I did about spirituality and angels, which I'm a spiritual person, so that was a really good experience. Other books that I've done, and ended up being about helping other people get their voices out. Do you see the pattern? So then I had my success with Cuddler, and I'm like, wait, well, how can I bring other people up? And some of it is actually understanding and crystallizing what I've learned too. As I do the ink column, as I do the books, as I talk to you, there ends up being almost like guidelines or a blueprint. Those dots are being connected for me too. As I speak to you, I'm realizing, as you can just tell, like a light bulb just went off with that. As I speak to you, as I help you, I'm actually understanding my own journey too. So it's not necessarily about, again, hopefully I conveyed that in the talk. It's not about like just giving and giving and giving. It's about understanding that when you're giving, you're actually creating more for yourself too. You know, so it's not about just being of service and I'm just here to serve the world. It's like, no, like it's almost like a cycle. I don't know if that answers your question. Yes.
I'm an editor, happy to be here, and I just really want to attest to writers are needed so much. You know, being like in the boardroom and hearing our CEOs and talking, we're really strapped for time. And so there's a lot of different content projects that are coming our way. And so I really want to encourage everybody to definitely know your worth with editors because you're needed so much. Like we rely on our contract writers so much, and they are really what make our company shine as we look at our magazines and our blogs. So I just want to thank you for saying that. I think that's something people forget as a person too. So just thank you so much.
No, thank you for emphasizing it. Yeah, that point is not to be. That wasn't a a footnote. Like that's a big part of it is understanding it, and getting that respect across all those relationships. So thank you for emphasizing it. Yes.
I just published my first book, literally
Yesterday?
yesterday.
Yesterday. Wow. What's the name of it?
It's called Success Faster, Quickly Launching or Relaunching a Real Estate Career.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, the hard copy came yesterday and I cried. It was exciting.
Hey, I did too. It's
Happy
good.
days
It's
and all of that.
yeah. You celebrate it.
There's
Yes.
a lot of you in the room have been there. My question is, I'm so excited too. My question is kind of the development of your team, if you will.
Okay.
So it's like the editors and the proofwriters and my graphic guy that kind of dropped the ball and I realized, it's like I found a couple really good people in the process and I found some folks that I probably won't use the next time around. So, so it's like to move towards a second book or another book. So I was wondering if you could just kind of talk about the journey of like finding your professional partners in the process. And that's why I'm here, really.
You took the words out of my mouth. Like that's number one is just being here. Number two is actually connecting with people that are outside of your circle. And I've talked about this. I talk about it in the book. I've written about it several times. Where one of the beautiful things is that you end up having, if you can really create it almost like a network's not the right word, but almost like a wide swath of people. People that are just interesting, or people that are doing things, and you might be able to help them. I'll give you a really simple example. I was one of the regular writers for the New York Post business section when I lived in Silicon Valley. And it happened to be this exciting time where the iPad came out, Steve Jobs died, these companies, some of them I was actually friends with the founders. They became millionaires and billionaires. Like, it was this crazy time from 08 to 11. And in that period of time, as a reporter, I was trying to get everyone's story, especially for the East Coast, right? Because I was on the West Coast, I'm trying to inform people in New York about it. And so I ended up connecting with venture capitalists and lawyers and, again, these founders. Again, some of them became my friends, some of them were just acquaintances, whatever. Fast forward 3 years later, I have the #1 app in the country. Who was I talking to? Right? I was talking to my friend who became a millionaire, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? Let me take you to dinner. I'll fly up there. Let me take you to dinner. Let me just talk to you, and how can I help you? But I was being of service to them, getting their story out. And I was genuinely curious about what they did, even though I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't trying to raise funding. So I think a really big part of it is to build that network before you actually need it. Actually connect with people and be curious about people before you actually need to ask them something. One of my favorite sayings is, you never start a relationship with an ask. Ever. Right? So it's like you connect with someone and it's like, yeah, so you do that? Oh, okay, well, I really need this right now. And it's like, what am I, like an ATM? Like, right? Am I like your servant? Like, what am I supposed to do here? And how is that going to build the relationship? Again, you see the pattern. How is that going to build the relationship into the future? So I'd say start building those contacts now. You can do it virtually, like through LinkedIn, or start following people on Twitter. You can actually have some strategy to it, and if you know you're going to do a second book, then start connecting with graphic designers. And it doesn't have to be, hey, I might use you for your next book. It could be like, hey, how can I help you? And people don't do that often enough, where it's just, how can I be of service to you? And not understanding, like we talked about, not understanding that begins the cycle. That begins everyone kind of being lifted up. Because I'm sure there's certain skills that you have that I will be awful at, and vice versa. So in connecting, then we're able to help each other as we go to those next levels, as we go to those next spaces, and really expand our career to where it's supposed to be. Does that make sense?
All right. Thank you so much to Damon, your inspiration.